Through you, Mr. Chair, it is 4 p.m. and the live stream and recording has begun. You may begin your meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Leach. Today is Monday, January 8th, 2024. This is the meeting of the Town of Pelham Committee of Adjustment. We have quorum present, and I would ask you, Ms. Leach, to begin this hearing by reading the land recognition statement.
Certainly. We begin this meeting by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe peoples, many of whom continue to live and work here today. The territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and is within the land protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today, this gathering place is home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, and acknowledging reminds us that our great standard of living is directly related to the resources and the friendships of the Indigenous people. Through you, Mr. Chair, you may begin.
Thank you, Ms. Leach. Today we have 3 members of the Committee of Adjustment. We have Mr. Colin McCann, Ms. Brenda Stan, and myself, Isaiah Bannock. We also have the Secretary-Treasurer, Sarah Leach, Mr. Andrew Edwards, the planner with the town, and Mr. Derek Young, engineering manager. This is a hybrid hearing of the Committee of Adjustment for the town of Pelham. Everyone present and viewing at home via live stream will be given an opportunity to comment on the applications being heard. Agencies commenting on applications may request that certain conditions be imposed should an application be approved. Voicing objections to these conditions will not adversely affect the committee's decision. The purpose of this application, the purpose of the application and relative correspondence will be heard, following which the applicant will be given the opportunity to address the application. During the public portion of each application, we hear from anyone wishing to submit verbal comments or submit written comments via email to clerks@pelham.ca. That's clerks@pelham.ca. Comments received following the public portion will not be considered. At the conclusion of the discussion, the committee will render a decision and advise of any applicable conditions. Specific wording for conditions may be determined by the committee following the hearing. Copies of decisions will be mailed to the applicant or agent and members of the public that have submitted comments. Notices of decision can also be obtained by request to the Secretary-Treasurer. Committee members are asked to raise your hand if you would like to speak and vote. Applicants, agents, and attendees are advised that they're free to leave the webinar or the committee room once a decision has been made on their application. Okay, we're on to agenda item 4, approval of agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I move we approve this agenda.
I second the motion.
All right, thank you. Agenda item 5. Do any members of this panel have a pecuniary interest in accordance with the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act in any of the applications to be considered at this hearing?
I do not.
And I do not as well.
I also do not. Okay, we're on to agenda item 6. I understand there may be requests for withdrawal or adjournment. Ms. Leach?
Yes, that is correct, and I would invite the representative for files B4 and B5, being 201 Canberra Road, as well as B6, 168 Pancake Lane, to the microphone.
Thank you. Hi, my name's William Hycoop. I'm the planning manager with Upper Canada Consultants, and I'm here on behalf of the 2 files, B4, B6, just regarding the request for
Deferral.
Deferral. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair, that would be up to the committee to grant that request.
Do we do that through a motion?
You may, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Is there a motion to grant the deferral for? And this is for, just to be clear, this is for, you're the representative, Mr. Hycoop, for the 201 Canberra Road, the 2 files related to that, B4 and B5.
Yes, that is correct, but I'm also here with a request for deferral for 168 Pancake Lane.
Oh, I see. Okay. So, so just to be absolutely clear, so. If we were to do a motion for deferral, it would be, we could do them as a block in relation to B4, which is 201 Canberra Road Part 1, B5, which is 201 Canberra Road Part 2, and B6, which is 168 Pancake Lane.
That's correct.
Okay. Is there a motion to do so, to defer those 3 applications?
Yeah, I'll move that we defer the applications B4, B5, and B6.
And I can second that motion.
All right, that's carried. Thank you.
Thank you. And then with that, if there's anyone in the gallery today or anyone viewing on live stream that was here to hear 201 Canberra Road or 168 Pancake Lane, those applications will not be proceeding today. You will be notified upon rescheduling if you're within that 200-meter radius. Otherwise, you are welcome to stay for the remainder of the hearing. To you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, I'll just give it a moment for some people to leave the room. Thank you. Thank you for coming. Okay, so we will proceed with the first file. This is file B1, 1039 Church Street, Pelham. Ms. Leach, will you begin with a presentation on this item?
Absolutely. Committee of Adjustment hearing Monday, January 8th, 4 p.m. The Town of Pelham is holding hybrid Committee of Adjustment hearings. A hybrid hearing involves a mixture of in-person and remote attendance and participation. The following presentations are based upon the Town of Pelham Planning Department report and analysis. No decisions have been made prior to this public hearing. All comments received from commenting agencies and the public have been forwarded to the Committee of Adjustment in full for their consideration. This is a public hearing requiring decorum. This means that all comments are to be made through the chair. If you've pre-registered to speak virtually or will be participating in person, you'll be given the opportunity to address the committee at the public portion of the meeting. If you are live streaming and wish to submit a comment live, please email clerks@pelham.ca. All comments must be received during the public portion of the meeting. Inappropriate comments will also not be tolerated. The first application this afternoon is B1/2024 P 1039 Church Street. The subject parcel is Part 2 on the sketch and has a frontage of 12.04 meters on the east side of Church Street, lying south of Welland Road. Application is made for consent to convey 434.74 square meters of land, being Part 2, for future construction of a single detached dwelling. Part 1 is to be retained for future residential development. To date, the following comments have been received. A building permit is required for the dwelling on Part 2. Public Works C condition. As well, with the recent sewer upgrade on Church Street, the anticipated paving will be completed by in the summer of 2024. Therefore, servicing must be completed prior to the final paving of Church Street from Foss Road to Canberra Road, and no public comments were received at the time of writing. Planning staff are of the opinion the proposal is aligned with the current planning and development goals and is consistent with the PPS and conforms to provincial, regional, and local plans. Planning staff recommends that application B1 be approved, subject to the following conditions: that the Secretary-Treasurer be provided with a registrable legal description together with a copy of the deposited reference plan, that the Secretary-Treasurer be provided the final certification fee of $436 payable to the Town of Pelham, that Part 2 is to be individually serviced with its own sanitary and water connections and constructed in accordance with town engineering standards. Installation of any services will require a temporary works permit to be obtained through Public Works. These works are to be completed prior to the consent, and the applicant shall bear all costs associated with these works. Locate cards are to be provided to the town once the works are complete, and servicing must be provided prior to final paving on Church Street. That the applicant submit an overall lot grading and drainage plan to demonstrate that the drainage does not negatively impact or rely on neighboring properties. That the applicant confirm that no existing utilities cross the proposed new property line. Should any services cross this line, the applicant shall be responsible for costs associated with their relocation. And the construction of new or modification to existing driveways requires a driveway entrance permit. This permit is obtained through the Public Works Department, and the applicant shall bear all costs associated with this. To you, Mr. Chair, we do have the agent with us, I believe.
We're seeing a nod. Come on
Yes,
forward.
perfect. We should have
Yes.
Mr. Eric Potts of the Quartet Group.
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you, and please start with your name. Thank you.
My name is Eric Potts. I'm from Quartet Group, and I am representing the ownership group for 1039 Church Street. I'll try and be brief, as I think you guys hit a lot of the notes there. But yeah, the property is on the east side of Church Street, lying south of Welland Road, being parts 2, 3, and 5, Plan 703, and Part 1 on Reference Plan 59R4712 in the town of Pelham. So the application is to sever a front portion of the property measuring 12.04 meters of frontage by 36.12 meters in depth for a lot area of 434.74 square meters of land, that being shown as Part 2 on the severance sketch. The purpose of this is for the future construction of a single detached dwelling. The entirety of the property for 1039 Church Street has already been through a zoning bylaw amendment application, which was approved back in September of 2023. The plans for the retained portion of the land, being Part 1, are to develop a apartment dwelling there, accessed by a private roadway with a condominium sharing the driveway and the parking portions of the property there. The front portion that's being proposed as a severed parcel here, being Part 2, is otherwise vacant, and the intent of this is to provide a intensification project here, where instead of keeping this property empty and vacant, we're able to keep it more synonymous with the intent of the neighborhood around, being mostly low and medium density housing. And so it's a slightly smaller frontage, but that was addressed through our zoning bylaw amendment application previously. So the R1148 designation that applies to this Part 2 being severed allows for a minimum lot frontage of 12 meters. So we are meeting that, as well as the minimum lot area with this proposed severed lot. And the building spec in design and the setback adherence could be addressed in the design period. Beyond this, in addition to this, the property has existing servicing in terms of water and sanitary servicing for 1039 Church Street. There would need to be new connections, as noted by the conditions for the severed property. We are willing to comply with the conditions that were listed in the recommendation there previously. In reference to the lot utilities, the existing utilities, it's hard to tell for sure, but it seems as though from what we've received from Hydro One that there may be what they call a secondary overhead conductor line that may pass over the property line between the Part 1 and Part 2 parcels. We would be willing to move that to adhere to the conditions of this severance. And so I think that covers off the crux of what I needed here. If there's any questions, feel free.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Potts. Oh, I don't know. Is my microphone on now? Okay. Are there any questions for Mr. Potts from the committee?
I have no questions.
No? Okay, doesn't look like it. I don't either, thank you. You can have a seat if you'd like, Mr. Potts. We will move to the public portion of the meeting. Do we have anyone who's pre-registered to speak via Zoom?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we do not.
Okay, is there anyone in the room who would like to speak to this? Doesn't look like it. Okay. Any emails, Ms. Leach? Have we received any emails?
Chair, it is 4:13 p.m. and we've received no emails.
Okay. Do we have a motion to close the public portion of the meeting?
Motion to close the public portion of the meeting?
And I'll second that.
Okay, so that is closed. So now we are on to the committee debate. Any comments, questions? Ms. Stan, Mr. McCann?
I have no questions. I can prepare a motion if we're ready.
Yep, go ahead.
We're good? Okay. File B1 2024P 1039 Church Street in the town of Pelham. Application for consent to convey Part 2 is granted, subject to the following conditions. To the satisfaction of Public Works, obtain a driveway entrance permit for new or modification of driveways. confirm that no existing utilities currently cross the proposed new property line, submit an overall lot grading and drainage plan. Part 2, be individually serviced with its own sanitary and water connection. To the satisfaction of the Secretary Treasurer, provide the Secretary Treasurer with a registerable legal description, a copy of the deposited reference plan, and the final certification fee of $436 be provided. This decision is based on the following reasons. This application conforms to and complies with the town's official plan, regional policy plan, and the provincial policy statement in the town's zoning bylaw. This decision is rendered having regard for sections 5124 and 5125 of the Planning Act. The committee considered all written and oral submissions and finds that, subject to the conditions, this application meets Planning Act criteria, is consistent, and complies with provincial, regional, and town planning policy. The applicant is aware and understands that servicing must be completed prior to the final paving of Church Street from Foss Road to Canberra Road.
And I will second that motion.
Okay, that carries, so the consent has been granted for that matter, and we can move on to the next matter, which I understand these two will be heard together. Is that right, Ms. Leach, B2 and B3?
That's correct. They are
Okay.
associated. I can share my screen.
Thank you.
And I do believe that the applicant is joining us via Zoom. If Jody, no, he's not here. Okay, no problem. We'll keep an eye out for him.
Ms. Leach, he's in, he's here
Oh,
in person.
sorry.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, applications number B2/2024P and B3/2024P 1171 Maple Street. The subject parcels are shown as Part 1 and 2, and each have a frontage of 11 meters on the east side of Maple Street. Applications are made for consent to convey 752 square meters of land, being Part 1, and 572 square meters of land, being Part 2, for future construction of a semi-detached residential dwellings. Part 3 is to be retained for continued use of the existing dwelling. To date, the following comments have been received. Building permits are required for the proposed dwellings. Public Works see conditions, as well as per town policy number S80201, tree maintenance policy. All costs incurred as a result of intentionally causing injury or removal of municipal boulevard trees shall be recovered as outlined in the town's fees and charges bylaw. And no public comments were received at the time of writing this report. Public Works did send a memo on January 5th to the committee. Public Works had issued a memo recommending revised language of their original condition to provide clarity on the sanitary strategy for the proposed lots. The original condition read the existing and the proposed lots are to be serviced by a private force main located on private property and maintained by the homeowners. Following discussions with the applicants, the Public Works Department is proposing new language, reading the proposed force main shall be constructed on private property within a municipal easement to be publicly owned and operated. A development agreement will be required to implement the design of the force main to the satisfaction of the Director of Public Works. Planning staff are of the opinion that the redevelopment of this property is a good form of gentle intensification within an existing neighborhood, which will have minimum impact on adjacent land uses. As well, the proposal is consistent with the PPS and conforms to provincial, regional, and local plans. Planning staff do recommend that applications number B2 and B3 2024P be approved, subject to the following: that the Secretary Treasurer be provided a registrable legal description together with a copy of the deposited reference plan. That the final certification fee of $436 be provided to the Secretary Treasurer payable to the town of Pelham, and that will be one fee per application. That the applicant confirm that no existing utilities cross the proposed new property lines. Should any services cross, the applicant will be responsible for the costs associated with their relocation and or removal. That the proposed force main shall be constructed on private property within a municipal easement to be publicly owned and operated. A development agreement will be required to implement the design of the force main to the satisfaction of the Director of Public Works. The proposed Part 1 and 2 is to be individually serviced with its own water service connections. This work is to be done by a suitable contractor at the owner's expense and will require a temporary works permit. Town of Pelham Public Works staff require the applicant to submit an overall lot grading and drainage plan to demonstrate that drainage does not negatively impact or rely on neighboring properties. And the construction of a new driveway requires a driveway entrance permit. The permit is to be obtained through Public Works, and all associated costs are the responsibility of the owner. To you, Mr. Chair, we do have the agent and applicant with us in the meeting today.
Thank you, Ms. Leach. Come on forward, Mr. Hycoop.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have a brief PowerPoint presentation that I'm hoping to deliver. Just going to bring that up and share my screen. So yes, as indicated, we're looking at the existing property of 1171 Maple Street, and we have applications for consent to create a semi-detached dwelling. Here you can see an aerial image of the property. It's generally located between Canberra Road and Sandra Drive with frontage along Maple Street. It is contains an existing single detached dwelling and detached garage. As you can see, the property is quite large and oversized for modern standards, considering it's in the urban boundary. Here you can see the consent sketch. So Part 1 and Part 2 are proposed to be each a half of a semi-detached dwelling. So there will be one new structure on Parts 1 and 2. The existing single detached dwelling and rear garage are to remain. There's a slight adjustment to the existing pergola due to the proposed property line, so that will be addressed. Overall, I just wanted to demonstrate that the proposal complies with the existing R1 or residential 1 zoning. The semi-detached dwellings are permitted uses in the R1 zone, and we have no zoning deficiencies related to the proposal in front of you today. We have a substantial lot area and frontage in order to accommodate the proposed semi-detached dwelling. So just to keep things brief, we agree with the staff report. We believe it satisfies and conforms with all the applicable planning policies. It is the intent of the R1 zone to have semi-detached dwellings, and the proposed development is compatible and does not negatively impact any adjacent properties or land uses. Just will verbally point out the reason for the change of the conditions, and through discussions with Public Works, the type of force main that we're proposing to do there for the sanitary sewer requires an ECA approval. We're not able to get that approval unless there's municipal ownership of that. So we had a good call, or my coworkers had a good call with staff on Friday, and we agree with the revised condition and find it a viable path forward. So that concludes my presentation. I'm certainly here should the committee have any further questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hycoop. Any questions for the presenter?
I have none.
I have no questions, thank you.
Thank you. I do have a question just on the servicing component and specifically the condition. I got a little bit tripped up with the change between the prior condition and the new proposed condition. And as I say this, I think this is an appropriate application. I think it's a good form of intensification that makes sense for the community. But I got tripped up because until you start explaining that it's an ECA approval that requires municipal ownership. So that makes sense to me. But when I look at the language, it says and maybe it's the wording here, it talks about, this is the condition that I'm reading from, the proposed force main shall be constructed on private property within a municipal easement to be publicly owned and operated. I mean, if it's I guess I got tripped up by the publicly owned and operated. If it's an easement, who owns it, who maintains it, whose responsibility is it? And then what would be contained in the development agreement? I guess it's kind of a second question, but maybe I could start there. What is the intent? Who is building it and paying for it? and then who is owning and operating it? I'll start with that question.
Certainly, Mr. Chair. So it is going to be constructed by the applicant at their expense. But as I indicated, well, and so that will be enshrined, the construction, installation, and a maintenance period associated with that installation, that will all be embedded within the development agreement. So that would be like a typical subdivision or site plan type of process. So that's the functionality of it. But long-term, how this works is that the MECP requires that it is ultimately a public facility. So that is why the conditions worded to be publicly owned and operated. So on the basis of having a municipal easement, a municipality can own infrastructure in an easement. It's commonly done all over the place for, let's say, for instance, rear yard catch basins. They're municipal infrastructure in an easement on private land. So this situation is no different. I think here, and not to put words in anyone's mouth, but in this instance, there are long-term plans. There's an ongoing design process and ultimately a pumping station that's going to go down on Memorial Drive. And long-term, conceivably, Maple Street would be reconstructed with a gravity sewer that would head back north to that pumping station. So this is really just an interim situation until that pumping station comes online, and eventually when a gravity sewer would get installed along Maple Street. So this is not something in perpetuity that would be an encumbrance on the municipality. It's more of an interim solution that allows for development to move forward and at the appropriate time hook onto a gravity sewer. I think Derek can add anything that I've missed, but that's my understanding of what this condition ultimately requires.
Okay, thank you for that, and maybe I will ask Mr. Young in a moment. That was very helpful. Can I understand the region's role in this as well? In reading the report, I know it spoke to permissions and connections. Could you explain that to me as well?
Yeah, so similarly, the region owns their own infrastructure within city and municipal right-of-ways. My understanding is that there are service level agreements between the region and municipalities for the various types of infrastructure. So the region's force main will be connecting into a manhole just south of the subject land frontage. So that Memorial Drive pumping station will have a force main that pumps in a southerly direction along Maple Street to just, I believe it's about 5 or 7 meters beyond the frontage of the property, where there's an existing manhole that is the end of the gravity sanitary sewer. So our proposal is to connect into that, and that's the servicing strategy.
Right. Okay, thank you. Mr. Young, anything that may be helpful to the committee in relation to the questions I asked? Anything that you would like to add? Or I know that wasn't really a direct question on that, but I wanted to invite you if I missed something or comment on that.
Through you, Mr. Chair. No, I mean, everything has been covered. The pumping station does form part of the Oak Haven subdivision, which is to the north of on Maple Street. And we're hoping that that's going to begin this year. So the force main and the pumping station will be constructed, start construction this year. And then it's actually assumed by the region once the works are completed. So
Right.
although the town's the proponent, because it's going on town property, the pumping station and the force main will actually be owned by the region once it's complete. Hence why the comments are in there regarding the region's ownership of the said force main outlets to the manhole.
Right. Okay, thank you, Mr. Young. And that's what I had thought as well. And it's more of a general question. Do these matters, how does this municipal servicing agreements work between the town of Pelham and the region in these kinds of cases for individual lot connections? I just found it a little bit unusual, and maybe it's just my lack of familiarity with it. But because there's two that are that there's a private facility of private force main, 2 private force mains, being added in as a solution, and then going to the or ultimately the region's infrastructure at a future time. How does the relationship between the town and region work in relation to that?
So the current situation is that the force main will go in as a current solution for the sanitary servicing for the property. When the pumping station and the force main for the pumping station get installed, it then allows the town to install the gravity sewers along Maple Street. And as part of that, all the properties that are on Maple Street that currently don't have any sanitary sewers, we will also construct each property will have its own sanitary service line up to property line. It will then be the homeowner's responsibility to do disconnect. I mean, there is a number of properties on Sandra and Maple at the corner there that are on a force main. I think there's maybe 10 or 12 of them at the moment. That will allow them to remove the maintenance costs that are associated with a force main. The force main requires a gravity or a grinder pump in the property. By putting a gravity main in, that removes that need and maintenance and responsibilities for the homeowner, and it then becomes a gravity feed out of the system and then becomes the town's responsibility because we have the gravity mains. So a lot of the costs are up front for the developer, but once the gravity main gets put in, a lot of that cost for the homeowner then disappears because the gravity and the force main are no longer required, because the gravity is already in the ground and the force main can then get removed.
Right. Okay. I'm just reading the condition again. All right. Any questions from the committee that arose from my questions there?
No, I'm good.
None
thank you.
for me.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Hycoop. I don't think there's any more questions for you. Thank you for your additional comments, for your presentation. Public portion of the meeting. Is there anyone who is registered via Zoom to speak to this matter?
Through Mr. Chair, there is not.
Anyone? No one in the room, it appears, that wishes to speak to this. Any submissions or comments by email?
Through Mr. Chair, no, and it is 4:32 p.m. We've received no emails.
All right. Motion to close the public portion of the meeting?
So moved.
And I second that motion.
All right. Any comments, questions, committee? Okay, and I think I've made my comments as well. I think this is an appropriate application to sever, to have this housing format in this location, and I'll be supporting it for those reasons. Do we have a motion in relation to this?
I will make the motion with reference to file B2 2024P and B3 2024P at 1171 Maple Street in Pelham. The applications for consent to convey Part 1 and 2, and move this be granted. This motion is based on the following conditions. To the satisfaction of the Public Works, they obtain a driveway entrance permit, an overall lot grading and drainage plan, confirm that no existing utilities currently cross the proposed new property line. The proposed force main shall be constructed on private property within a municipal easement to the publicly owned and operated. A development agreement will be required to implement the design of the force main to the satisfaction of the Director of Public Works. That the proposed Part 1 and Part 2 is to be individually serviced with its own water service connections and will require a temporary works permit. To the satisfaction of the Secretary-Treasurer, they receive a registerable legal description, a copy of the deposited reference plan, and a final certification fee of $436. This motion is based on the following reasons. The applicant conforms to and complies with A, the town official plan, regional policy plan, and provincial policy statement, and the town's zoning bylaw. This motion is rendered having regards to sections 51 sub 24 and 51 sub 25 of the Planning Act. The committee in making this motion has considered all the written and oral submissions and finds that, subject to the conditions, this application meets the Planning Act criteria, is consistent, and complies with provincial, regional, and town planning policy. The applicant is aware and understands that all costs incurred as a result of intentionally causing injury or removal of municipal boulevard trees shall be recovered as outlined in the town schedule of fees and charges bylaw.
And I second that motion.
Okay, so that is approved for files B2 and B3. That takes us to item 9, minutes for approval. Do we have a motion to approve the November 6th, 2023 minutes?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. And
can-
seconder?
I can second that motion.
Perfect.
Okay, motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Seconded.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, can confirm it's 4:35 PM and we have adjourned.